Now today we're arranging with some gorgeous sunflowers as well as an array of supermarket flowers. We've got some Mitsumata canes and some gorgeous dried palms. So come along and see what we're going to make. Welcome to today's video. We're going to look today at something that's a little bit more of a modern design using some supermarket flowers and a little bit of garden foliage. We're going to make quite a tall arrangement where the flowers are grouped together, so a little bit different to what we've done over the last couple of weeks. Now I have this round teak bowl. In true style, it's one of those charity shop finds, and I filled it with floral foam. This probably isn't a design that you could do successfully with wire netting because it's quite structured and follows quite a set pattern. And often with wire mesh, you can't get that formal placement. It's more suitable for loose and informal designs. So today we've got floral foam. This is the bio foam, so it's a little bit better than the ordinary green foam, and it does degrade down a bit quicker than the normal one, but still not a brilliant product for the environment. So I'm going to start with some gladioli. Now here in the UK, they're just about coming through in the supermarkets, and you can't quite tell yet, but this is a very pale dusky peach, and I'm going to remove the greenery from the bottom, and this is going to be my tallest flower. Now we're going to go quite tall with this one because my flower content is quite large, so therefore the design needs to be fairly large to accommodate all the big flower blooms that I've got. So we are at least twice the width of my container, just to give you a little bit of context. And I'm not arranging into the small pieces of foam that are at the back. They're almost there to hold my foam into place and to stop it moving around. If I just tilt this forward, you can see I'm going straight into that center block. And I'm off to what is my left-hand side. So initially, I'm going to bring a column of flowers, very much like a parallel design. So if you've seen me do parallel arrangements before, and there are lots on the channel, then you might have seen something very similar to this. And what I'm looking for, you can see me fiddling around, is a flower head that's starting to open. They're all fairly similar in size, but what I'm trying to do is as I come down to the bottom, the development of the gladioli gets bigger and bigger as we get down towards what is sort of the focal point there at the bottom. So we're going to avoid our most open flowers at the top. We're going to keep those to bring that colour and that texture right the way through to the bottom. So I don't have a great deal of choice. They are fairly similar. Isn't that just lovely? The colour is beautiful. It's a peachy apricot shade, and I've removed all of the foliage off the gladioli. I don't know whether I'm going to use it, but I am putting it to one side just in case I decide at the end that I want a little bit of line or a little bit of colour or texture in the arrangement. So we've got this very classic sort of shape, parallel lines and grouped together. I'm going to bring the more open head right the way down towards the base, possibly a little bit shorter, and that's going to help bring that same colour and texture all the way through to the bottom. You could quite easily do this arrangement in a smaller container with just the gladioli and some leaves at the bottom, but I'm going to introduce some other flowers. And at the back, if you're placing this up against a wall, then you really just need to finish with some greenery down low to cover your floral foam. But I've got this one gladioli left. I'm not planning on using it in the front of the arrangement. So what I'm going to do is almost place it at the back so that it's back to back with those front flowers, and it's just going to help thicken that design and bring the depth all the way through to the back. And I did say I wasn't going to arrange into that piece of foam at the back, and what have I done? I've gone and put that gladioli in there. Sometimes when the foam is really small and you've just used it to fill in, it isn't solid enough to hold your flowers, so just be a little bit mindful of the possibility that the foam might crumble as you're working with it. So a lovely column structure, fairly straight. If you're worried about the tops of the gladioli moving and traveling towards the light, then you can take the growing tip off at the top. But I'm quite happy with the way that looks. Now I've got a garden flower, which doesn't really look like a flower, it's more like a seed head, but this is Phlomis. I think I used it earlier on in the year. It's normally got a yellow, almost like a parachute effect of flowers around this green centre section. But this is how it is now after the yellow flower has died off. And it does give you quite a modern sculptural effect. So this is going to be used really on the opposite side to my gladioli. Remembering not to start at the same height. Lower your placements down so your eye is gently moving step by step down towards the front. So a lovely one for the garden. If you're thinking about collecting plants for your garden, this is early summer, late sort of spring flowering Phlomis. And that's going to fit in quite nicely there. So I've got that group of contrasting textures and colours there on one side. Again, if you had a narrow vase and some foliage at the bottom, you could probably leave the arrangement just like that. But I've got those magnificent yellow sunflowers, and we are in the sunflower season, so we're heading now into the summer, and there are lots of sunflowers here available in the supermarkets. So now is a good time. I'm just going to poke my head out. So now is a really good time to be using them when they're in their best season. And you'll see that I've removed all of the greenery. Foliage on the sunflower doesn't survive very well, and it does look quite scruffy, and it dehydrates very fast. So your sunflower head is going to survive much longer if you've removed all of that greenery. Now my plan with the sunflowers is that I'm going to bring 2 up quite high and 3 down towards the bottom. And for those of you that are used to arranging traditional flower arrangements and you're used to having flowers very symmetrically and very balanced, then don't worry about arranging flowers in 2s and 3s. It's perfectly acceptable. You just need to learn a different style of arranging and a different technique and a different method. So what I'm going to do here is just feed 2 of those sunflowers quite close together, right up high in the arrangement, making sure that the sunflowers are quite deep in the foam. The top section of the foam will dry out much quicker than the bottom, so the further down you can get those flowers, the more chance they have to survive. And if I just spin that round, you can see we've got 2 very close together but higher up in the design. And I'm going to bring 3 lower down, so we're bringing that colour and that texture all the way through to the bottom. Might not be a way that you're used to arranging flowers, but you know, we're going to try and show you something different in every tutorial. So if this sunflower here had been a little bit longer, I would have put this one at the top because it's the smallest flower. But for some reason, it was much shorter in the bunch than the rest. So I was a bit limited to where I could put it. But ideally, your smaller flowers need to be at the top and your bigger flowers towards the bottom. Okay, so let's just carry on bringing this lovely, bright and cheerful colour down towards the front. And you'll notice at this stage, I'm now starting to bring the flowers forward. Up until now, it's all been quite straight, quite regimented with the flowers all parallel arranged. Now I'm slightly bringing them forward to help create some depth and get that 3D effect. So this one is going to come towards the front. And if you're not used to seeing this sort of big gap, then I've got a cluster of 2 flowers and then a cluster of 3, which is perfectly fine in a more modern or contemporary style of arranging. Just spin that all the way around. Still a little bit of foam to cover at the bottom, but we've got some greenery for that. And now I'm going to introduce Mitsumata cane. So these are these lovely bleached branches, lovely and straight. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time seeing which way they naturally form. This one is the thinner of the flower, so that's going to look quite nice tucked in here on the side. It's just going to introduce another colour and another texture, and it's going to just elongate the arrangement. They can sometimes be expensive to buy, but then when you've got them, you can reuse them time and time and time again. You can spray paint them, you can use them in different styles of arrangements. And if you haven't got the dried and bleached stems like I've got, then just look in the garden or go out for a walk and see what branches and twigs you can get. Now for this section here, I'm going to introduce a cluster of Alstroemeria, something that I don't often arrange with because they can be a little bit tricky, but what they are good for is arranging on the main centre stem. Again, I've removed the greenery off them because the foliage can become quite scruffy. But what I'm going to do here is create this massed concentration of that one flower type and that one flower head, so that it's not so traditionally arranged and we get a grouping effect, which creates a design that's a little bit more contemporary or a little bit different in its style. So this would be ideal on an entrance table. You could put it in a reception desk. It would be ideal for either side of the altar if you made a matching pair. And if you haven't got a container that's quite as wide as this, then you can use less flowers to make a more slimline version. So at the base, just to cover my foam, I've got this time some garden Fatsia. And if you've seen me use Fatsia before, they are often a much nicer green, a much darker, rich colour green. These are from my garden, and I'm guessing that they're a little bit low in whatever nutrient they need, probably potassium or magnesium, which will really help encourage that nice green colour. So they could do with a little bit of feed to bring that colour back. And to go with them, or balance the design off on the opposite side, are these dried palms. Now the dried palms have come from one of my neighbour's gardens. It would have originally been a really big lush green palm. I've taken off the straggly ends of the palm, cut it down, so I've got this more rounded shape. And what I'm doing here is repeating the round shape of the sunflowers, the round shape of my container. And what I will do with them is, rather than put them on the same side as the pale coloured Alstroemeria, I'm going to put them on the opposite side and then use the darker green just behind those Alstroemeria there, so that the contrasting colour is much better. Okay, now these can often be quite tough. So I've got my scissors ready and I can snap them just to make it a bit easier. It would have been better if I had my secateurs to hand, but it's just over there on the opposite side of the studio. So these gorgeous leaves are so wonderful for arranging with, and if you've got a palm, then cut them back, dry them off in the home, somewhere where there's plenty of air circulating, and you can use them time and time again. They are just lovely. I think this one is going to pop in a little bit more towards the front there. Now originally when these were dried, they were on very long stems, but I've cut them down to use them. So you can use them in really big designs if you need to. They're great for church flowers because you can use them over and over again. And maybe if you've got friends and family with gardens, just think about what they might have that you could possibly dry and keep for use at a later date. So repeating that on the opposite side, I'm going to place in my 3 Fatsia. I'm not quite sure if I like the limey colour, but it does suit this colour combination that I've got here today. But they look so much nicer when they're rich and dark and really glossy. So I'm thinking that the 2 of them at the front there are fine. I don't need to add another one in because it's visually going to be quite heavy. So what I'm going to do with this one is pop it towards the back. This is going to help cover my foam there at the back and to bring the colour all the way through to the back. Just that one leaf, very strategically placed, is pretty much covered all of my foam. So really good use of foliage there. And just down in the centre, where you probably can't see from the camera angle, I'm going to pop in some ordinary florist leatherleaf in the few places where I can see the foam. There's not a great deal of foam showing, and I know from the camera angle you probably can't see it, but it's important that you cover all that foam. It prevents the floral foam from drying out too quickly, and it makes your design that much neater and really improves the finish and the quality of your arranging. So I think I'm quite happy with that overall design. Gorgeous summer sunflowers with some accompanying supermarket flowers. I always say, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and other people find us. If you want to put a comment in the box below, feel free. Let me know what you like or what you dislike, where you're watching me from, and what you would like to see explained on the channel. As ever, thanks for watching and goodbye for now.